The bells of Ashbourne Cathedral rang beneath a sky the color of iron, announcing a marriage neither bride nor groom had chosen. Seraphina Vane stood at the altar in a gown of pale ivory, her fingers clenched around a bouquet of winter roses. Across from her waited Duke Lucien Arclay, the most feared nobleman in the kingdom. She had heard every rumor about him. They said he had sent traitors to the gallows without mercy. They said servants trembled when he entered a room. They said his first wife had died under mysterious circumstances. Seraphina believed none of it completely. She had seen the Duke only once before today, but she had noticed something the rumors never mentioned: exhaustion behind his cold eyes. The priest raised his voice. "Do you accept this marriage?" Seraphina's throat tightened. Her father's life depended upon her answer. 3 days earlier, soldiers had dragged Lord Vane from their estate and accused him of conspiring against the crown. The evidence was suspicious, the witnesses conveniently silent, and the sentence had been swift. Then the king had offered Seraphina a bargain. Marry Lucien Arclay, and her father would live. Refuse, and he would die. "I accept," she whispered. The Duke answered just as quietly, "I accept." When the ring touched her finger, Seraphina expected Lucien to look triumphant. Instead, his expression softened for a fleeting second. "Forgive me," he murmured. She stared at him. "For what?" "For putting you through this." Before she could respond, the chapel doors opened violently. A royal messenger rushed inside. "Your Grace, soldiers have surrounded Vane Manor." Seraphina went pale. "My father." Lucien turned toward the messenger. "Who gave the order?" "The king's chancellor." Something dangerous entered the Duke's eyes. "Then the wedding is over." He started toward the doors. Seraphina caught his sleeve. "Take me with you." "No. You promised my father would live." "I intend to keep that promise." "Then I am coming." Lucien studied her determined face. "You don't understand what awaits us. My father is waiting there." The Duke's jaw tightened. Then he removed his heavy cloak and placed it around her shoulders. "Stay beside me." They rode through the storm with a dozen guards. When they reached the manor, smoke curled above the rooftops. Seraphina ran toward the entrance, but Lucien caught her hand before she could cross the courtyard. "Wait." A burning beam crashed down where she would have stepped. He pulled her against him. For one breath, they stood frozen together. Then Lucien pushed her behind him and entered the burning house. "Stay here." Seraphina watched him disappear into the flames. Minutes passed. Then came a child's scream from an upper window. Lucien emerged carrying Seraphina's younger brother. His coat was burning. His arm was bleeding. Yet he barely noticed. He placed the boy safely in her arms and immediately turned back toward the house. Seraphina seized his wrist. "No. My father is still inside." The Duke looked at her. "I know." He returned to the flames. Seraphina's fear changed into something she could not name. The monster she had been warned about was risking his life for her family. Then, through the smoke, Lucien appeared again. This time he was carrying an unconscious man. Her father. Seraphina ran to them. As soldiers carried Lord Vane away, Lucien suddenly staggered. Blood darkened his shirt. Seraphina caught him before he fell. "You're hurt." "I've had worse." "You're lying." A faint smile touched his mouth. "Probably." She pressed her hand against his wound. His gaze met hers. For the first time, there was no Duke between them. Only a wounded man and the woman who had been forced to become his wife. Then Lucien whispered something that made her heart stop. "Seraphina, your father's arrest was never about treason." He looked toward the burning manor. "Someone wanted you married to me." "Why?" His expression hardened. "Because they know what your family has been hiding." And somewhere inside the collapsing house, a locked door slammed open. The locked door beneath the ruined manor stood open when Lucien returned from the fire. Seraphina stared at the darkness beyond it, unable to understand how such a passage could exist beneath her childhood home. Her father, still weak from the smoke, gripped her wrist. "Do not go inside." Lucian crouched beside him. "Who knew about this?" Lord Vane hesitated. "Your mother." Seraphina's breath caught. Her mother had died when she was 7. At least, that was what she had always been told. Before she could question him, a distant hoofbeat echoed outside. Lucian immediately rose. "Someone is coming." The Duke extinguished every lamp and pulled Seraphina into the shadows. A moment later, armed riders stormed into the courtyard. "The house!" a soldier shouted. "Search every room. The Duke must not leave alive." Seraphina looked at Lucian. "They came for you." "No," he whispered. "They came because of what is behind that door." He led her through the passage while her father was carried safely through another exit. The tunnel ended beneath an abandoned chapel several miles away. Inside, Lucian finally stopped. Seraphina noticed blood spreading across his sleeve. "You were injured in the fire." "It's nothing. You nearly collapsed." "I've survived worse." She tore a strip from her dress and wrapped his arm. Lucian watched her silently. "You shouldn't waste your dress on me. You shouldn't waste your life protecting people who were forced upon you." His expression softened. "I wasn't protecting you because I had to." "Then why?" He looked away. "Because when I first met you, I realized you were being punished for crimes you never committed." Seraphina's fingers tightened around the bandage. "And now?" "Now I'm afraid someone will use you to destroy me." She stepped closer. "Then let them try." For the first time, Lucian smiled. It was brief, but genuine. They returned to the chapel after midnight and discovered an iron box hidden beneath the altar. Inside lay letters written by Seraphina's mother. The first sentence shattered everything she believed. "My daughter, if this reaches you, then the king has finally turned against the man who tried to protect us." Seraphina read on. Her mother had discovered that the royal chancellor was secretly eliminating noble families who possessed evidence of an old conspiracy. Seraphina's father had hidden the final proof, but someone had betrayed him. Then came the name of the betrayer. Seraphina dropped the letter. "No." Lucian picked it up. His face hardened. The traitor was someone who had stood beside Seraphina's family for years. Someone who had attended her wedding. Someone who knew exactly where she would be tonight. A sound came from outside. Lucian drew his sword. The chapel doors burst open. 3 masked men rushed inside. Lucian fought the first 2, but the third reached Seraphina. She struck him with the iron box. He stumbled. Lucian seized the opportunity and drove him backward. The attackers fled into the darkness. One dropped a silver signet ring. Lucian picked it up. Seraphina recognized the crest immediately. "It belongs to the king's chancellor." Lucian's eyes narrowed. "Then we finally know who is hunting us." A sudden cry came from the road. They rushed outside. A carriage had overturned beside the chapel. An elderly woman lay injured beside it. Seraphina ran toward her. The woman opened her eyes. For several seconds, she simply stared at Seraphina. Then she whispered her name. "Seraphina." Seraphina froze. Nobody outside her family called her by that childhood nickname. The woman reached for her hand. "I am your mother." Seraphina could not breathe. Lucian stood behind her, stunned. The woman gripped her daughter's fingers. "I survived because your father believed I was dead." She looked toward the dark road. "And now the people who tried to kill us know that I am alive." In the distance, horns began to sound. An army was approaching. Lucian reached for his sword. Seraphina held her mother's hand tighter. Whatever happened next, she knew one thing. Her forced marriage had never been the beginning of her story. It had been the beginning of the conspiracy that would change the entire kingdom. The approaching army reached the chapel before Seraphina could recover from the shock of seeing her mother alive. Lucian stepped in front of both women, sword drawn, while Lord Vane struggled to rise. "How many?" he asked. Too many, Seraphina's mother answered. And they are not here to arrest us. A horn sounded beyond the trees. The soldiers dismounted. Then came a voice Seraphina recognized. Lady Seraphina, surrender the Duke and your mother, and your father will be spared. The Chancellor. Seraphina's hands curled into fists. He has my father. Lucien shook his head. No. He wants you to believe that. Her mother looked toward the forest. Your father escaped through the eastern passage. Seraphina stared at her. You knew. I sent him away before I came here. For the first time, hope broke through her fear. Then the chapel doors splintered. Lucien struck the first soldier aside while Seraphina dragged her mother toward the hidden passage. Steel rang against steel. Lucien fought with controlled fury, never wasting a movement, but there were too many attackers. A blade cut across his side. Seraphina screamed his name. He turned for one fatal second. An enemy soldier raised his sword behind him. Seraphina grabbed a fallen torch and struck the man's face. He collapsed. Lucien stared at her. You saved me. You told me to stay beside you. A reluctant smile appeared. I did. They escaped through the tunnel and emerged near the river, where a single carriage waited. Inside was Seraphina's father. Alive. She rushed into his arms. I thought you were dead. I thought I had lost you. For several moments, father and daughter held each other without speaking. Then Lord Vane looked at Lucien. You kept your promise. Lucien bowed. I intend to keep it. The Duke suddenly staggered. Blood had soaked through his shirt. Seraphina caught him. You need a physician. I need to get you somewhere safe. You are impossible. I've been told. She pressed her hand against his wound. Then listen to me for once. Lucien looked at her. She was frightened, furious, and trembling. But she refused to let him see her break. I won't lose another person I love. The words escaped before she could stop them. Lucien went completely still. Seraphina realized what she had said. Neither looked away. Then he touched her cheek. Say that again. She swallowed. I won't lose you. He leaned his forehead against hers. Then I have another reason to survive. They reached an abandoned fortress before dawn, where Lucien's loyal guards were waiting. While a physician treated his wound, Seraphina studied the letters recovered from the chapel. One document contained the final piece of the conspiracy. The Chancellor had not acted alone. The king had ordered the arrests. But beside his signature was another name. Lucien's uncle. The Duke's closest advisor. Seraphina carried the document into Lucien's chamber. He betrayed you. Lucien read the page in silence. His face hardened, but his voice remained calm. How long has he known? Long enough to arrange your marriage. Lucien looked up. That explains everything. What? Your marriage was designed to place you under my protection so the Chancellor could watch me. They expected us to destroy each other. Seraphina's heart sank. Instead, we trusted each other. Lucien reached for her hand. That was their mistake. At sunrise, the fortress gates opened. Lucien's uncle stood outside with hundreds of soldiers. He called for the Duke to surrender. Lucien walked onto the battlement. You should have killed me when you had the chance. His uncle smiled. I still do. Then Seraphina stepped beside Lucien. And you'll have to get through me first. The soldiers laughed. But Seraphina noticed something else. Several of them were lowering their weapons. Her father's evidence had already begun spreading among the army. The Chancellor had counted on fear. He had not counted on the truth. One by one, soldiers dropped their swords. Lucien's uncle stared in disbelief. Then the fortress gates opened from within. The king's own guards entered. The conspiracy was collapsing. But before the traitors could be arrested, a messenger arrived from the capital with news that changed everything. The king had abdicated. and the council had chosen Lucian as the kingdom's new ruler. Seraphina looked at him. He looked terrified. "You don't want the crown?" "No." "Then refuse it." Lucian squeezed her hand. "I will." But before he could speak, Seraphina's father approached. "There is one condition." Lucian frowned. Lord Vane smiled. "The council will accept your refusal only if you name someone else." Everyone turned toward Seraphina. She stared at him in disbelief. Her father bowed. "My daughter knows what this kingdom needs." Lucian looked at her. And Seraphina suddenly understood. Her forced marriage had begun as a weapon. Now it had become something far more dangerous to the people who had created it. A choice. The council chamber fell silent as every noble turned toward Seraphina. She had entered the fortress as a frightened daughter desperate to save her father. Now they were asking her to decide the fate of an entire kingdom. Seraphina looked at Lucian. "You should accept the crown." His brows drew together. "You told me to refuse it." "I did." "Then why change your mind?" "Because refusing power doesn't make power disappear." She stepped forward. "The kingdom needs someone who understands what happens when rulers place ambition above people." "You do." Lucian studied her. "And you?" "I understand what happens when people have no voice." Her father smiled. "That is why the council chose you." The vote was unanimous. Seraphina became the kingdom's first ruling duchess, while Lucian remained beside her as protector and consort. Together, they dismantled the laws that had allowed noble families to purchase marriages, imprison innocent citizens, and silence accusations against powerful men. The chancellor was sentenced. Lucian's uncle confessed everything. And Seraphina's father was restored to his title, though he refused the estate and gave it to families who had lost their homes during the conspiracy. Peace finally returned. But Lucian had one unfinished promise. Months later, he brought Seraphina to the chapel where they had first married. The building had been repaired, but he had removed the royal decorations. Only candles remained. Seraphina looked around. "Why did you bring me here?" Lucian reached into his coat. He held out a small velvet box. She laughed softly. "Another political proposal?" "No." He opened it. Inside was a simple ring. "This time," he said, "there is no king, no bargain, no threat, and no obligation." He lowered himself onto one knee. "Seraphina Vane, will you marry me because you want me?" Her eyes filled with tears. "You know the answer." "I want to hear it." She took his hand. "Yes." He slipped the ring onto her finger. She pulled him to his feet and kissed him before he could say another word. When they separated, Lucian smiled. "That was much better than our first wedding." "Almost. Almost. You were still wearing that dreadful black coat." He laughed. The sound echoed through the chapel, where fear had once filled every corner. Then the doors opened. Her mother entered first, followed by her father and Lucian's loyal guards. Behind them came dozens of villagers carrying lanterns. Seraphina stared. "What is this?" Her father smiled. "Your people wanted to thank you." One by one, the villagers entered the chapel. Some had lost homes. Some had lost family. All had survived because the truth had finally been exposed. A little girl approached Seraphina and placed a crown of wildflowers in her hands. "You saved us." Seraphina knelt before her. "No. We saved one another." The girl smiled. Lucian watched from behind her. For the first time, Seraphina understood that their story had not ended with revenge or a throne. It had ended with people who no longer lived in fear. Years later, the kingdom would remember the night Seraphina was forced to marry the duke. But that was not the story she told her children. She told them about the night their father entered a burning house for a family that had once been forced upon him. She told them about a secret tunnel, a lost mother, and a kingdom nearly destroyed by greed. And she told them about the question Lucian had asked when he finally gave her a choice. Would she stay? Her answer had changed both their lives. One winter evening, Long after the conspiracy had become history, Lucien found Seraphina standing beside the palace window. He wrapped his arms around her. "Do you ever regret marrying me?" She turned and smiled. "Not for a single day. Even the first?" She laughed. "Especially the first." He kissed her forehead. Outside, hundreds of lanterns rose above the city. Seraphina watched them disappear into the night. She had once believed marriage would be the end of her freedom. Instead, it had led her to the man who taught her that love could never be demanded. It could only be chosen. And every morning after that, Seraphina chose Lucien again. Not because she was a duchess, not because she owed him anything, but because, after everything they had survived, she finally possessed the one thing no king, duke, or enemy could ever take from her: her own choice. And she chose him.